The rain hit the glass doors of St. Mary's Hospital with a steady rhythm. It was 7 o'clock in the evening, and the October sky had turned dark early. Inside the main lobby, warm yellow lights made everything look softer and more peaceful than it really was. Marcus Chen sat at the old black piano in the corner of the lobby. His fingers moved across the white and black keys with practiced ease. He had been playing at this hospital every Tuesday and Thursday evening for 3 years now. The hospital staff knew him well. The security guards would wave at him when he arrived. The nurses would smile and sometimes request their favorite songs during their breaks. Marcus was 28 years old. He had studied music in college but never became a famous musician. Instead, he worked as a music teacher at a small school during the day. Playing at the hospital was something he did for free. He liked bringing music to people who were going through hard times. When people were sick or worried about their loved ones, music seemed to help them feel a little better. Tonight, Marcus played a soft and gentle piece. The melody was slow and calm. It was the kind of music that made people stop and take a deep breath. A few people sat in the lobby waiting area. An old man read a newspaper. A young mother held her sleeping baby. 2 teenagers sat together, holding hands and looking worried. Then Marcus noticed her. A young woman sat alone in the far corner of the lobby. She was away from everyone else, almost hidden behind a large potted plant. Her head was down and her shoulders shook slightly. Even from where he sat, Marcus could tell she was crying. The woman looked to be in her mid-20s. She had long dark hair that fell around her face. She wore a simple blue sweater and jeans. Her hands were pressed against her face and she seemed completely lost in her sadness. Marcus had seen many people cry in this hospital. It was a place where people received bad news. It was a place where families said goodbye to people they loved. But something about this woman's loneliness touched his heart. She looked so small and so alone. He continued playing, but he chose his music more carefully now. He picked songs that were gentle and comforting. He played pieces that spoke of hope and light even in dark times. Music was the only way he knew how to help. After about 15 minutes, Marcus glanced over at the woman again. She had lifted her head slightly. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She was looking at him, or rather, she was looking at the piano. Her expression was strange. It was sad, but there was something else there too. Recognition, maybe, or memory. As Marcus played, he noticed something unusual. The woman's hands were moving. Her fingers were pressing down on invisible keys in her lap. She was playing along with him, but on a piano that was not there. Her movements were precise and careful. She knew what she was doing. She was a pianist too, or at least she had been. Marcus finished his song and paused for a moment. He usually took short breaks between pieces to rest his hands. During this pause, he looked over at the woman more directly. Their eyes met for just a second. She looked away quickly, embarrassed that he had noticed her. Marcus began playing again. This time he chose a classical piece by Chopin. It was a nocturne, beautiful and emotional, the kind of music that could make a person cry even on a happy day. As he played, he poured all his feeling into it. He wanted to send this music to the crying woman in the corner. He wanted it to wrap around her like a warm blanket. When the piece ended, Marcus heard footsteps approaching. He looked up and saw the young woman walking toward him. She moved slowly, as if she was not sure she should be doing this. Her eyes were still wet with tears. She stopped a few feet away from the piano. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said. Her voice was soft and rough from crying. "That song you just played, it was beautiful." Marcus smiled gently. "Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it." The woman bit her lip. Fresh tears filled her eyes. "That kind of music? It was my grandmother's favorite. She used to play pieces like that all the time when I was little." "Your grandmother is a pianist?" Marcus asked. She is. I mean," the woman's voice broke. She took a deep breath and tried again. "She's here, in this hospital. She had a stroke this morning. The doctors say she might not make it through the night." "I'm very sorry," Marcus said. He meant it deeply. "Is she the one who taught you to play?" The woman looked surprised. "How did you know I play?" Marcus gestured toward the waiting area. "I saw your hands moving while I was playing. You were following along." A sad smile crossed the woman's face. "I guess old habits are hard to break." She paused, then extended her hand. "I'm Sarah Morrison." "Marcus Chen," he replied, shaking her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Sarah." Though I wish it was under better circumstances, Sarah nodded. She looked like she wanted to say more but did not know how to begin. Marcus waited patiently. He had learned that sometimes people just needed a moment to find their words. My grandmother raised me, Sarah finally said. My parents died in a car accident when I was 5 years old. Grandma Margaret took me in. She was the one who taught me everything. How to tie my shoes, how to ride a bike, how to be a good person. Sarah's voice grew softer. And she taught me how to play piano. We would sit together at her old piano for hours. She had so much patience with me. She sounds like a wonderful person, Marcus said. She is. She's the best person I know. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm sorry. I don't usually fall apart in front of strangers. It's just been such a terrible day. You don't need to apologize, Marcus told her. This is a hard place. People come here when they're going through the worst moments of their lives. If you can't cry here, where can you cry? Sarah let out a small, sad laugh. I suppose that's true. She looked at the piano, then back at Marcus. Do you play here often? Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, Marcus said. I've been doing it for 3 years now. That's kind of you. I bet it means a lot to people. Marcus shrugged. I hope it helps a little. Music can't fix anything, but maybe it makes the hard times a bit easier to bear. Sarah stared at the piano keys. Her fingers twitched slightly as if they wanted to touch the keys. I haven't played in 2 years, she said quietly. Why did you stop? Marcus asked. Sarah hesitated. For a moment, Marcus thought she would not answer. Then she said, Things changed. Life got complicated. Marcus sensed there was more to the story, but he did not push. People shared what they were ready to share, nothing more. A nurse walked through the lobby and called out, Morrison family? You can go back to see her now. Room 412, Sarah's face went pale. That's me. I have to go. She looked at Marcus with gratitude in her eyes. Thank you for the music. It really did help. I'll be here for another hour if you need a break, Marcus said. Sometimes it helps to step away for a few minutes. Sarah nodded and hurried toward the elevators. Marcus watched her go, feeling a deep sadness for this young woman and her dying grandmother. He turned back to his piano and began to play again. This time he played something hopeful, a piece that spoke of love that never dies even when people do. The next hour passed slowly. Marcus played song after song. The lobby gradually emptied as visiting hours came to an end. Finally, at 8:30, Marcus closed the piano lid and packed up his sheet music. He said goodnight to the security guard and stepped out into the rain. As he walked to his car, Marcus thought about Sarah Morrison. He wondered if her grandmother would survive the night. He wondered about the sadness he had seen in Sarah's eyes. There was something deeper there, something more than just grief over a sick relative. Marcus drove home through the wet streets. He lived in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building. It was not much, but it was enough for him. He had his books, his music, and his quiet life. That night, as he lay in bed, Marcus could not stop thinking about Sarah. He had met hundreds of people at the hospital over the years. Most of them he forgot after a few days. But something about Sarah stayed with him. Maybe it was the way she had moved her fingers along with his music. Maybe it was the deep sadness in her eyes. Or maybe it was simply that he recognized a fellow musician, someone who understood the language of music the way he did. 2 days passed. Thursday evening came and Marcus returned to the hospital for his regular session. He sat up at the piano as usual and began to play. He found himself looking around the lobby, searching for Sarah, but she was not there. Marcus told himself it was silly to expect her. Her grandmother was probably still in intensive care. Sarah would be upstairs at her bedside, not down in the lobby listening to a stranger play piano. He played for an hour, and just as he was about to pack up, he saw Sarah step off the elevator. She looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. But when she saw Marcus at the piano, her face brightened just a little. Sarah walked over to him. You're here again. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Marcus reminded her with a smile. How is your grandmother? Sarah's expression became complicated. She's alive. The doctors say she's stable now. She made it through the critical period, but... Sarah's voice dropped. She's not awake. She's in a coma. They don't know if she'll wake up or what condition she'll be in if she does. I'm sorry, Marcus said. That must be incredibly hard. It is. Sarah sat down on the bench beside him. I've been at her bedside almost constantly. Sarah took a deep breath. I can't actually hear you play. Marcus looked at her in confusion. What do you mean? I mean I'm deaf, Sarah said. The words came out flat and simple. I lost my hearing 2 years ago in the same car accident that killed my parents. Well, a different car accident. I was in another car crash 2 years ago. I survived, but my hearing didn't. Marcus stared at her, trying to process this information. But you said the music helped. You were moving your hands along with the notes. I know it sounds crazy, Sarah said, but I wasn't hearing the music. I was watching you play and remembering. I learned piano from the time I was 6 years old until I was 23. I have thousands of songs memorized. When I watch someone play, I can imagine what it sounds like. I remember the melodies, and I can see the emotion in how they play. The way you move, the expression on your face, how hard you press the keys. All of that tells me about the music, even though I can't hear a single note. Marcus sat back, amazed. I had no idea. You hide it well. I've had 2 years to practice, Sarah said with a bitter smile. Most people can't tell unless I tell them. I learned to read lips. I pay attention to body language. And I avoid situations where people expect me to respond to sounds I can't hear. That must be so hard, Marcus said. Sarah shrugged. It was horrible at first. Music was my whole life. I was working as a piano teacher, just like you. I played in a small orchestra on weekends. And then one day, a drunk driver ran a red light and everything changed. I woke up in the hospital and the world was silent. Completely silent. I can't imagine, Marcus said honestly. The worst part was losing music, Sarah continued. I tried to keep playing for a while. I thought maybe I could do it by memory and feeling. But it wasn't the same. I couldn't hear if I was making mistakes. I couldn't feel the emotion in the sound. Playing music without hearing it is like painting without seeing colors. Eventually, I just gave up. Do you miss it? Marcus asked. Every single day, Sarah admitted. When I saw you playing the other night, it all came back. The memory of what it felt like to create music, to lose myself in a piece, to make something beautiful. She looked at the piano with longing. I used to play that Chopin nocturne you performed. It was one of my favorites. Marcus looked at this brave young woman beside him. She had lost so much. Her parents, her hearing, her music, and now possibly her grandmother. Yet here she sat, still finding moments of beauty in watching someone else play. I have an idea, Marcus said slowly. What if you played something now? Sarah's eyes widened. Oh no. I couldn't. I told you I can't play anymore. You said you can't hear yourself play, Marcus corrected. But that doesn't mean you can't play. Your hands remember. Your heart remembers. I'd make too many mistakes, Sarah protested. So what, Marcus said. There's no one here to judge you. It's just us and the piano. Play something simple. Something you know by heart. Sarah looked terrified and tempted at the same time. Her hands trembled as she stared at the keys. I don't know. Just try, Marcus encouraged. One simple song. For your grandmother. That seemed to decide it. Sarah took a shaky breath and positioned her hands over the keys. Marcus moved over to give her room. For a long moment, Sarah just sat there, frozen. Then slowly she began to play. The melody that emerged was simple and sweet. A children's song, perhaps a lullaby. Sarah's fingers moved carefully, finding each note with deliberate precision. She made mistakes. Several times she hit wrong keys or hesitated too long between notes. But she kept going. Marcus watched her face as she played. Her eyes were closed and tears ran down her cheeks. But she was smiling too. A small, sad, beautiful smile. When she finished, Sarah's hands dropped into her lap. She looked at Marcus with wonder in her eyes. I did it. I actually played something. You did, Marcus confirmed, and it was beautiful. You're just being nice. I made so many mistakes. Maybe, Marcus said. But you also made music. Real music. Music that came from your heart. That's what matters. Sarah wiped her tears away. I haven't played a single note in 2 years. I was so sure I never would again. Why not? Marcus asked gently. Because what's the point of making music if you can't hear it? Marcus considered this. Can I ask you something? When you played just now, what were you thinking about? My grandmother, Sarah said immediately. I was thinking about sitting beside her at her piano when I was little. She would guide my hands and help me find the right keys. Even when I made mistakes, she would just smile and tell me to try again. So you were connecting with her, Marcus said. Through the music. Even though you couldn't hear it, you felt something. You remembered something important. That's what music is really about. It's not just about the sounds. It's about the feelings and memories and connections those sounds create. Sarah looked at him thoughtfully. I never thought about it that way. Maybe music doesn't have to be something you hear, Marcus suggested. Maybe it can be something you feel, something you remember, something you share with others. Sarah sat quietly, processing this idea. Finally, she said, "Would you play something else? I want to watch you again." "Any requests?" Marcus asked. "Something my grandmother would love. Something full of hope." Marcus thought for a moment, then began to play. He chose a piece that was warm and bright, like sunshine after rain. As he played, he watched Sarah from the corner of his eye. She sat very still, her eyes fixed on his hands. Her own fingers moved slightly in her lap, following along with the invisible melody. When he finished, Sarah smiled at him. It was the first genuine, happy smile he had seen from her. That was perfect. "Thank you, Marcus." "You're welcome, Sarah." A nurse appeared in the lobby entrance. "Miss Morrison, your grandmother is showing some movement. The doctor wants you upstairs." Sarah jumped to her feet. "I have to go. But Marcus, will you be here next week?" "Tuesday and Thursday," he promised. "I'll be here." Sarah squeezed his hand briefly, then hurried toward the elevators. Marcus watched her go, feeling that his life had just shifted in some small but important way. He had come to the hospital to bring music to strangers, but somehow he had found something more. He had found a connection with someone who understood music the way he did, even in silence. Marcus packed up his things and headed home. As he drove through the darkening streets, he thought about Sarah Morrison and her silent world. He thought about music and meaning and the different ways people experience beauty, and for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt like his music really mattered, not because it was perfect or impressive, but because it had touched someone in a deep and real way. It had reminded Sarah of who she was and what she had lost. And maybe, just maybe, it had shown her that not everything was lost forever. Some things, like music and love and memory, could survive even in silence. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus first met Sarah Morrison in the hospital lobby. In that time, he had seen her almost every Tuesday and Thursday evening when he came to play. Sometimes she would sit and watch him for just a few minutes before returning to her grandmother's room. Other times she would stay for his entire hour-long session. Sarah's grandmother, Margaret, had come out of her coma after 5 days. This was good news, but it came with complications. The stroke had damaged part of her brain. Margaret could not speak anymore. She could barely move her right side. The doctor said she would need months of therapy, and even then she might never fully recover. Sarah took a leave of absence from her job to care for her grandmother. She spent most of her days at the hospital, helping with therapy sessions and just being there. Marcus could see the exhaustion building in her face week after week. The dark circles under her eyes grew darker. She lost weight. Her clothes started to hang loose on her thin frame. But whenever she watched Marcus play, something in her face would soften. For those brief moments, the weight she carried seemed to lift just a little. On a Thursday evening in early November, Marcus arrived at the hospital to find Sarah waiting for him in the lobby. This was unusual. Normally, she would appear partway through his session, but tonight she sat on the bench near the piano watching for him. "You're early," Marcus said, setting down his bag of sheet music. Sarah smiled slightly. "I wanted to talk to you before you started playing. Do you have a minute?" "Of course." Marcus sat down on the bench beside her. "How's your grandmother doing?" "Better. She's making progress in physical therapy. Yesterday she squeezed my hand with her left hand. It's a small thing, but it felt like a miracle." Sarah's expression grew more serious. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. My grandmother has been trying to communicate something to me for days. She can't speak, but she keeps making gestures. Finally, today, a speech therapist figured out what she was trying to say." "What was it?" Marcus asked. "She wants me to play piano for her." Sarah's voice was tight. "She keeps making motions like she's playing keys." The therapist brought in a picture board and Grandma pointed to a piano, then to me. Marcus waited, sensing there was more. "I told her I can't," Sarah continued. "I tried to explain through gestures and writing that I don't play anymore. But she got so upset. She started crying. The nurse had to calm her down." Sarah looked at Marcus with desperate eyes. "She doesn't understand why I won't play for her. And I can't explain about my hearing loss. She doesn't remember the accident. The stroke erased parts of her memory. So she doesn't know you're deaf?" Marcus asked. No. She remembers me as a child, and she remembers some things from when I was a teenager, but the last few years are just gone for her. Sarah twisted her hands together in her lap. As far as she knows, I'm still the granddaughter who loved playing piano more than anything. That must be incredibly difficult, Marcus said. It is. I don't want to disappoint her, but I can't play for her. What if I make terrible mistakes? What if it sounds awful? I'd rather she remember me playing beautifully than hear me struggle through something badly. Marcus thought about this for a moment. Can I ask you something? When you played that simple song here a few weeks ago, how did it feel? Sarah considered the question. Scary, emotional, but also, she paused, searching for the right word. It felt like coming home, like finding a part of myself I thought was lost forever. Maybe that's what your grandmother wants, Marcus suggested. Not a perfect performance, but a connection with you. A way to share something that was always important to both of you. But I'll make mistakes, Sarah protested. I can't even hear what I'm playing. So what? Marcus said gently. Your grandmother can't speak, but she's still trying to communicate with you. She's doing the best she can with what she has. Maybe you could do the same. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I'm scared. I know, Marcus said. But sometimes the things that scare us most are the things we need to do. Sarah looked at the piano. Would you help me? I can't do this alone. Help you how? Teach me to play again. Not the way I used to play, but a new way. A way that works for someone who can't hear. Sarah turned to face him fully. I know it's a lot to ask. You barely know me. But I don't have anyone else to turn to. You're the only person who might understand. Marcus felt his heart skip. Teaching Sarah would be a challenge unlike anything he had attempted before. He had never worked with a deaf student. He had no idea if it was even possible. But looking at Sarah's hopeful, desperate face, he knew he had to try. Okay, he said. I'll help you. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Really? You mean it? I mean it. We'll figure this out together. Sarah threw her arms around him in an impulsive hug. Thank you. Thank you so much. Marcus hugged her back, feeling the thinness of her shoulders and the way she trembled slightly. When she pulled away, she was smiling through her tears. When do we start? She asked. How about right now? Marcus suggested. I'm already here. We can use the lobby piano. Now? But don't you have to do your regular playing session? The hospital will survive one night without it, Marcus said. This is more important. They moved to the piano together. Marcus sat on the bench and gestured for Sarah to sit beside him. She did, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. First, let's talk about how you're going to experience music without hearing it. Marcus began. You mentioned before that you watch my hands and face and you remember how things should sound. That's a good start, but there are other ways to feel music. Like what? Sarah asked. Vibration, for one thing. Marcus placed his hand flat on the wooden side of the piano. When someone plays, the whole instrument vibrates. You can feel that if you know what to look for. Go ahead. Put your hand here on the side of the piano. Sarah placed her palm against the smooth wood. Marcus played a deep, low note. Sarah's eyes widened. I felt that. It was like a little tremor in the wood. Exactly, Marcus said. Now feel this. He played a high note. The vibration was different, lighter and quicker. That's amazing, Sarah said. I never thought about feeling music through the piano itself. Now try this. Marcus stood up and gently moved Sarah's hand to the top of the piano, near the strings inside. Play a note. Any note. Sarah hesitated, then pressed down on middle C. She gasped. I can feel it so much more here. The vibration goes right through my hand. The piano is a whole body experience, Marcus explained. Not just for the person listening, but for the person playing. When you press a key, you're making a hammer hit a string. That string vibrates. The whole instrument vibrates. The bench vibrates. Even the floor can vibrate if the piano is loud enough. Sarah looked fascinated. I never paid attention to any of this when I could hear. I was too focused on the sound. Most people are, Marcus agreed. But now you're going to learn to pay attention to the things most musicians ignore. They spent the next hour exploring different aspects of the piano. Marcus showed Sarah how to feel the vibrations in different parts of the instrument. He taught her to pay attention to the resistance of the keys. Some keys required more pressure than others. The way a key felt under your finger could tell you about the tone being produced. Now let's talk about rhythm, Marcus said. Rhythm is something you can feel without hearing. Put your feet flat on the floor. Sarah did as instructed. Marcus played a simple, steady rhythm, 4 beats over and over. Can you feel that? Sarah nodded slowly. Yes, it's like a pulse going through the floor. Good. Rhythm is physical. It's in your body. When you play, you can feel rhythm through your feet, through your hands, even through your breathing. Marcus demonstrated, tapping out a rhythm with his foot while playing the same rhythm on the piano. Sarah watched carefully. So I need to use my whole body to feel the music, not just my ears. Exactly, Marcus said. You're going to become aware of music in a completely different way. It might even make you a better musician than you were before. Sarah looked doubtful. I don't know about that. Think about it, Marcus said. Most musicians rely too heavily on their ears. They don't pay attention to the physical experience of making music. You're going to be forced to notice every detail, every vibration, every movement, every feeling. That could make your playing very special. Sarah smiled a little. You're an optimist. Someone has to be, Marcus said with a grin. They continued working together. Marcus had Sarah practice simple scales, focusing on the feeling in her fingers rather than the sound. He showed her how to keep steady time by using a visual metronome on his phone. The light would blink on and off at a steady pace, giving her a rhythm to follow with her eyes. After an hour, Sarah played a simple melody from memory. It was not perfect. She missed several notes and her timing was uneven, but she made it through the entire piece. When she finished, she looked at Marcus with wonder. I did it. I actually played a whole song. You did, Marcus confirmed. How did it feel? Strange, difficult, but also good. Really good. Sarah looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. I can't believe I'm playing again. This is just the beginning, Marcus said. If you really want to play for your grandmother, we need to practice more. A lot more. I'll do whatever it takes, Sarah said firmly. When can we meet again? They made a plan to meet 3 times a week. Sarah would come to Marcus's apartment where he had a piano, and they would practice together. Marcus would teach her everything he knew about playing without hearing. Over the next several weeks, Sarah became Marcus's most dedicated student. She showed up to every practice session on time, often early. She practiced between their meetings even though she had no way to know if she was playing correctly. She simply trusted in the techniques Marcus had taught her. Marcus watched her progress with amazement. Sarah worked harder than any student he had ever taught. She took notes on everything he showed her. She recorded video of his demonstrations and watched them over and over, studying his hand movements and facial expressions. Slowly, Sarah began to develop her own unique style of playing. Because she could not hear the notes, she played more slowly and deliberately than most pianists. She gave each note its full value, letting it resonate completely before moving to the next one. The result was a kind of playing that was careful and thoughtful, full of intention. One evening, about 6 weeks into their work together, Marcus noticed something different about Sarah. She looked healthier. Her face had more color. She had gained back some of the weight she had lost. Most importantly, there was a light in her eyes that had not been there before. You look happy, Marcus observed during a break in their practice. Sarah smiled. I am happy. For the first time in 2 years, I feel like myself again. Music was always such a big part of who I was. When I lost it, I lost myself too. But now, she looked at the piano with affection. I'm finding my way back. I'm glad, Marcus said. And he truly was. Somewhere along the way, teaching Sarah had become about more than just helping her play for her grandmother. It had become about helping her heal. Can I tell you something? Sarah asked. Something I haven't told anyone else? Of course. After I lost my hearing, I was really depressed. Like seriously depressed. There were days I didn't want to get out of bed. Days I didn't want to exist anymore. Sarah's voice was quiet but steady. Music was my whole life, and suddenly it was gone. I felt like I had nothing left to live for. Marcus felt a chill run through him. Sarah, it's okay, she assured him. I'm past that now. I went to therapy. I took medication for a while. I slowly built a new life for myself. But there was always this empty space inside me where music used to be. I thought that space would be empty forever. She looked at Marcus with grateful eyes. You showed me that it doesn't have to be. You showed me that I can still have music in my life, just in a different way. Marcus did not know what to say. He felt humbled and honored that he had been able to help her this much. I want you to know that even if I never play for my grandmother, this has all been worth it, Sarah continued. You've given me back a part of myself. That's a gift I can never repay. You don't need to repay it, Marcus said. Seeing you learn and grow and become happy again, that's payment enough. They smiled at each other, and in that moment, Marcus realized something that surprised him. He cared about Sarah Morrison. Not just as a teacher cares about a student, but as a friend cares about a friend. Maybe even more than that. He pushed that thought away quickly. Sarah was dealing with enough. She did not need him developing feelings for her on top of everything else. Should we get back to work? He asked, perhaps a bit too quickly. Sure, Sarah agreed. They returned to the piano and continued their lesson. Marcus taught Sarah a new technique for finding the right keys without looking. He had her practice scales with her eyes closed, relying only on muscle memory and the feel of the keys under her fingers. Sarah concentrated hard, her brow furrowed in focus. When she made mistakes, she did not get frustrated. She simply tried again, and again, and again. That was one of the things Marcus admired most about her. Her determination, her refusal to give up even when things were difficult. She had been through so much loss and pain, yet here she was, still trying, still hoping, still reaching for something beautiful. As the weeks passed, Sarah and Marcus fell into a comfortable rhythm. They were not just teacher and student anymore. They were partners in this musical journey. They laughed together when Sarah made funny mistakes. They celebrated together when she mastered a difficult passage. They talked about music and life and everything in between. Marcus found himself looking forward to their practice sessions more than anything else in his week. His regular job teaching children felt boring compared to the challenge and joy of working with Sarah. His hospital performances felt less meaningful without her there to watch. He knew he was getting too attached. He knew he should probably maintain more professional distance. But he could not help himself. Sarah had become important to him. One Thursday evening, Sarah came to practice with news. Grandma's being moved to a rehabilitation facility tomorrow, she said. The doctors think she's ready for more intensive therapy. That's great, Marcus said. That means she's getting better. It does. But it also means, Sarah bit her lip. The facility allows patients to have personal items in their rooms. I was thinking I could arrange for a small keyboard to be brought in, so when I'm ready I can play for her there. Do you feel ready? Marcus asked. Sarah took a deep breath. Almost. I want to practice more. I want to be really confident before I play for her. But I'm getting close. What do you want to play for her? Marcus asked. There's a lullaby she used to sing to me when I was little. She made up her own piano arrangement of it. I want to play that for her. It's special to both of us. Do you remember how it goes? Sarah nodded. I remember every note. It's burned into my memory. She played it for me almost every night for years. Then let's work on it, Marcus said. They spent that entire session focusing on the lullaby. It was a simple melody, but it had to be perfect. This was not just any performance. This was Sarah playing for the person who mattered most to her in the world. Marcus listened as Sarah played through the piece again and again. Of course, he did not actually listen to check for mistakes. Instead, he watched. He watched her hand positions. He watched her timing against the visual metronome. He watched her expression. And what he saw amazed him. Sarah played with such emotion that it came through in every movement. Her hands did not just press keys. They caressed them. They coaxed music from the piano with love and care. Even though she could not hear the notes, she poured her heart into every single one. When she finished the final run-through of the evening, Marcus had tears in his eyes.
What's wrong?
Sarah asked, concerned. Nothing's wrong, Marcus said, wiping his eyes. That was beautiful, Sarah, really truly beautiful. Sarah looked pleased but uncertain. You're not just saying that. It really sounded okay? It sounded more than okay. It was perfect. Sarah's face lit up with joy. Do you really think I'm ready to play for Grandma? Marcus nodded. I think you're ready, and I think your grandmother is going to love it. Sarah threw her arms around Marcus in another one of her impulsive hugs. He hugged her back, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and feeling the warmth of her body against his. When she pulled away, her eyes were shining. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yes, you could have, Marcus said. I just gave you a few tools. You did all the hard work yourself. Saturday morning arrived with clear blue skies and cold winter sunshine. Marcus woke up early, too nervous to sleep. Today was the day Sarah would play for her grandmother. He felt almost as anxious as if he were performing himself. He spent the morning trying to distract himself. He cleaned his apartment. He practiced piano. He tried to read a book but could not focus on the words. Finally, at 1 o'clock, he gave up and drove to the Riverside Rehabilitation Center. He arrived 30 minutes early. The Rehabilitation Center was a newer building, much more cheerful than the hospital. The walls were painted in warm colors. Windows let in plenty of natural light. Plants sat in corners and on windowsills. It looked like a place where people got better, not a place where people went to die. Marcus checked in at the front desk and was given a visitor badge. The receptionist pointed him toward the day room, where Sarah had said she would meet him. The day room was a large open space with comfortable chairs, tables for activities, and a television in one corner. Several residents sat around the room. Some played cards. Others watched TV. A few simply stared out the windows. Sarah sat alone at a table near the far window. In front of her was a small digital keyboard, the kind that could run on batteries and had built-in speakers. She stared at it like it might bite her. "Hey," Marcus said softly as he approached. Sarah jumped, then laughed at herself. "Sorry, I'm so nervous I'm jumping at everything." "That's understandable," Marcus said, sitting down across from her. "Big day, huge day," Sarah agreed. She twisted her hands together on the table. "What if I mess up? What if I make so many mistakes that Grandma gets upset? What if she realizes I can't hear anymore and it upsets her?" "Take a breath," Marcus said gently. "You've practiced this piece 100 times. You know it by heart. And even if you make a few mistakes, your grandmother isn't going to care. She just wants to hear you play. She wants that connection with you." Sarah nodded but still looked terrified. "I know you're right. But my hands are shaking so much, look." She held out her hands. They trembled visibly. Marcus reached across the table and took both her hands in his. "Listen to me, Sarah, you are ready for this. I've heard you play this lullaby perfectly over and over. You can do this." Sarah's eyes met his. "Will you stay right here, where I can see you?" "I think I can do it if you're nearby." "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus promised. A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Miss Morrison, your grandmother is ready for you. We've set up a space in the community room where she can sit comfortably. Several other residents want to watch too, if that's okay. We told them someone was going to play piano and they got excited." Sarah's eyes went wide. "Other people? I thought it would just be Grandma and me." The nurse looked apologetic. "I can tell them no if you prefer. But some of our residents don't get many visitors. A little live music would really brighten their day." Sarah looked at Marcus helplessly. He gave her an encouraging nod. "You can do this. It's just like practicing at my apartment except with a few more people around." Sarah took a deep breath. "Okay, other people can watch." They followed the nurse down a hallway to a larger room. About 15 residents sat in wheelchairs and regular chairs arranged in a semicircle. In the center of the semicircle was a small table with the digital keyboard on it. A chair was placed behind the keyboard, and there, in a wheelchair in the front row, sat Margaret Morrison. Sarah's grandmother was a small, thin woman with white hair and kind eyes. The stroke had left the right side of her face slightly drooped, and her right arm rested limply in her lap. But when she saw Sarah, her whole face lit up with joy. Sarah hurried over to her grandmother and knelt beside the wheelchair. She took Margaret's good hand and kissed it. Margaret smiled and made a sound, trying to speak. No words came out, but the love in her expression needed no words. Sarah pulled out a small notebook and pen. She wrote something and showed it to her grandmother. Margaret nodded eagerly and pointed at the keyboard with her good hand. Sarah wrote something else. Margaret read it and shook her head firmly. She pointed at Sarah, then at the keyboard, then made a playing motion with her good hand. The message was clear. She wanted Sarah to play. Now, Sarah stood up slowly. Her whole body was tense with nerves. She walked to the keyboard like she was walking to her own execution. Marcus found a seat near the back of the room where Sarah could easily see him. He gave her a thumbs up and a smile. Sarah sat down at the keyboard. She placed her hands on the keys, then pulled them back. She looked at Marcus with panic in her eyes. Marcus mouthed the words, "You can do this." Sarah closed her eyes. She took several deep breaths. Marcus could see her lips moving. She was counting, he realized. Counting herself in, getting ready to start. Then slowly, Sarah placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes were hesitant and soft. Sarah played carefully, finding each key with deliberate precision. The melody that emerged was simple and sweet, a lullaby that spoke of love and comfort and home. Marcus watched Sarah's face as she played. Her eyes were closed. Her expression was one of intense concentration, but there was something else there too: peace. Despite her nervousness, despite the audience, despite everything, Sarah was at peace in this moment. The residents watched in silence. Some smiled. Some closed their eyes and swayed gently to the music. But everyone was captivated, and Margaret Morrison watched her granddaughter with tears streaming down her face. Her good hand reached out toward Sarah as if she could touch the music itself. Her whole body leaned forward, drinking in the sight of Sarah playing. Sarah made it through the first verse without any major mistakes. Her confidence seemed to grow. Her playing became more fluid and natural. The second verse was even better than the first. Then, in the middle of the third verse, Sarah's hands froze. She had lost her place. For a horrible moment, she just sat there, fingers hovering over the keys. Marcus's heart clenched. He willed her to keep going. "Come on, Sarah, you know this. You can do it." Sarah opened her eyes and looked around the room in panic. Her gaze found Marcus. He nodded at her slowly and deliberately. He mouthed, "Start again." Sarah took a breath. She closed her eyes again, and she started the third verse over. This time her hands found the right notes. The melody continued. Sarah played through to the end of the lullaby, the last few notes soft and gentle like a whisper. When she finished, she kept her hands on the keys for a moment, not moving. Then she opened her eyes and looked at her grandmother. Margaret was crying openly now. Her good hand moved to her heart. She was trying to speak, making sounds that were not quite words but were full of emotion. The love and pride in her expression was unmistakable. The other residents began to clap. The sound started softly, then grew louder. Several people called out compliments. "Beautiful." "Wonderful." "Play another." Sarah stood up slowly. She looked dazed, like she could not quite believe what had just happened. She walked over to her grandmother and knelt beside her wheelchair again. Margaret reached out and cupped Sarah's face with her good hand. She pulled Sarah close and kissed her forehead. Tears ran down both their faces. The nurse who had brought them to the room stepped forward. "That was lovely, dear. Would you play something else for us?" Sarah looked uncertain. She glanced at Marcus. He nodded encouragingly. "Okay," Sarah said quietly. "One more." She returned to the keyboard and played another piece. This one was more cheerful, a simple folk melody that made people smile. When she finished, the residents applauded again, even louder than before. Sarah played 2 more pieces before finally stopping. By then, some of the residents were singing along to the melodies they recognized. Others were tapping their feet or clapping along. The whole room had come alive with music and joy. When Sarah finally stood up from the keyboard for the last time, several residents called out thank yous and requests for her to come back. Sarah promised she would, though she looked overwhelmed by all the attention. Margaret gestured for Sarah to come close. When Sarah leaned in, Margaret made a motion like she was playing piano, then pointed at Sarah and gave her a thumbs up with her good hand. Sarah laughed through her tears and hugged her grandmother. A staff member came to help Margaret back to her room for her afternoon rest. Before she left, Margaret looked at Sarah one more time and blew her a kiss with her good hand. Sarah caught it and pressed it to her heart. After all the residents had left, Sarah sat back down at the keyboard. She stared at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Marcus came over and sat beside her. "You did it. You actually did it." "I can't believe that just happened," Sarah said. Her voice was shaky. "I was so scared. And when I messed up in the middle, I thought I was going to die. But then I looked at you and you helped me get back on track." "You helped yourself," Marcus said. "I just reminded you that you could do it. But you were the one who had the courage to start again." Sarah turned to look at him. "Did it sound okay, really? You're not just being nice?" "It sounded beautiful," Marcus said honestly. "You played with so much emotion, Sarah. It wasn't just technically correct. It was full of love. Everyone in this room felt that." Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. "Did you see my grandmother's face? She was so happy. I haven't seen her smile like that since before the stroke." Sarah wiped her eyes. "I need to tell you something." When I was playing, something strange happened. Even though I couldn't hear the music, I felt it. Really felt it. It was like the music was flowing through me instead of just coming from my fingers. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Marcus said. That's what music is supposed to feel like. You connected with something bigger than yourself. That's the magic of it, Sarah smiled. I never thought I'd feel that again. I thought when I lost my hearing, I lost that connection forever. But today proved me wrong. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sarah said, I want to keep playing. Not just for my grandmother, but for myself. For other people too. Today showed me that I can do this. I can still make music that matters. You absolutely can, Marcus agreed. In fact, I have an idea. What if we started doing something together? Like what? Marcus thought quickly. The idea had just come to him, but the more he thought about it, the more right it felt. What if we created workshops for people who have lost their hearing but want to stay connected to music? We could teach them the techniques I taught you, show them that music can exist beyond sound. Sarah's eyes went wide. That's a brilliant idea. There must be so many people out there who feel the way I did, lost and disconnected from something they love. We could help them, Marcus said. You could help them. You understand what they're going through in a way I never could. We'd be a team, Sarah said. You with your teaching skills and musical knowledge. Me with my experience of being deaf and learning to play again. Exactly. Sarah grabbed Marcus's hand excitedly. Let's do it. Let's really do this. Marcus felt a surge of excitement. This was bigger than just helping Sarah. This could be something that changed lives. Many lives. But as he looked at Sarah's enthusiastic face, he also felt something else. That feeling he had been trying to ignore for weeks. He was in love with this woman. Completely, totally in love with her. The realization hit him like a wave. He loved her courage. He loved her determination. He loved the way she smiled when she figured out a difficult passage. He loved the way she trusted him. He loved everything about her. But he could not tell her, not now. She was dealing with so much already. Her grandmother's recovery, learning to play piano again, and now this new project they were planning. The last thing she needed was him complicating everything with his feelings. So Marcus pushed his emotions down and focused on the practical. We'd need to find a space to hold the workshops. And we'd need to get the word out to the deaf community. I know some people, Sarah said. I went to a support group for people with hearing loss right after my accident. I could reach out to them. And there's a community center for the deaf in the city. We could partner with them. They spent the next hour planning. Ideas flowed between them easily. Marcus was amazed at how well they worked together. They thought alike in many ways, but they also balanced each other out. Where he was practical, she was creative. Where she was cautious, he was encouraging. By the time they left the rehabilitation center, they had the basic outline of a plan. They would start small with maybe just a few students. They would hold the workshops at the community center. Sarah would handle outreach to the deaf community, and Marcus would develop the curriculum. As they walked to their cars in the parking lot, Sarah turned to Marcus. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you doing all this? Helping me, I mean. You didn't have to. We were strangers when we met. But you've spent months teaching me, encouraging me, supporting me. Why? Marcus thought about his answer carefully. He could not tell her the full truth, not yet. So he told her a partial truth instead. Because I believe in you, he said simply. From the first moment I saw you in that hospital lobby, I saw someone special. Someone who had been through hell but was still standing. I wanted to help you find your way back to what you love. And honestly, teaching you has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. You've taught me just as much as I've taught you. Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears. You're a good person, Marcus Chen. A really good person. So are you, Sarah Morrison. They stood there in the parking lot, looking at each other. For a moment, Marcus thought about telling her how he really felt. The words were right there on the tip of his tongue. But then Sarah glanced at her watch. I should go. I told the nurses I'd come back and sit with Grandma for a while before dinner. The moment passed. Of course. Tell her I said hello. I will. Sarah gave him a quick hug. Thank you again. For everything. You're welcome. Marcus watched her drive away, feeling a mix of happiness and longing. Today had been a success. Sarah had played for her grandmother. They had made plans for their workshop project. Everything was moving in the right direction. So why did he feel so unsettled? Because he was in love with Sarah Morrison, and he had no idea what to do about it. Marcus drove home slowly, thinking about the situation he had gotten himself into. He had agreed to work closely with Sarah on this workshop project. That meant spending even more time with her, which meant his feelings would probably just get stronger. Maybe that was okay, he told himself. Maybe he could just enjoy being her friend and working partner. Maybe his feelings did not need to be acted on. Maybe it was enough to just care about her and support her dreams. But even as he thought this, Marcus knew he was lying to himself. He wanted more than friendship with Sarah. He wanted to hold her hand and not have to let go. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to tell her all the things he admired about her. He wanted to be the person she turned to, not just when she needed help, but all the time. He arrived home and sat at his piano. He did what he always did when his emotions were complicated. He played. The music that came out was full of longing and hope and fear all mixed together. It was music about loving someone and not knowing if they could ever love you back. It was music about wanting to speak but staying silent. It was, Marcus realized, a melody for Sarah, a melody she would never hear. He played until his fingers were tired and his heart felt a little lighter. Then he made himself dinner and tried to focus on practical things. The workshop, the curriculum, finding students. But in the quiet moments when there was nothing to distract him, his thoughts always returned to the same place. Sarah Morrison, the woman who had learned to make music in silence. The woman who had taught him that some of the most beautiful things in life could not be heard, only felt. The woman he loved but could not have. Marcus went to bed that night with a heavy heart. He was happy for Sarah and all she had accomplished. He was excited about their workshop project. But he was also sad in a way he had not expected to be. Because loving someone who did not know you loved them was its own kind of silence. A silence that could not be broken with music or words or any of the things Marcus knew how to do. All he could do was wait and hope and keep his feelings locked safely inside where they could not hurt anyone. But silence, Marcus was learning, could be the heaviest burden of all. The next few weeks were busy. Sarah visited her grandmother every day and reported that Margaret was making good progress in her therapy. She was starting to regain some movement in her right arm. She still could not speak, but she was learning to communicate through gestures and a picture board. Meanwhile, Sarah and Marcus worked on planning their workshop. Sarah reached out to the Deaf Community Center and got an enthusiastic response. The director said there were many people who would be interested in learning to connect with music again. They set a date for their first workshop session. It would be 4 weeks away on a Saturday afternoon. That gave them time to prepare and advertise. Marcus developed lesson plans. He thought about all the techniques he had taught Sarah and how to present them to a group. He practiced explaining concepts clearly and simply. He gathered materials and made handouts with visual aids. Sarah created flyers and posted them at the community center, at deaf social clubs, and online in forums for people with hearing loss. She wrote about her own experience learning to play piano again. Her personal story resonated with people. Within a week, they had 15 people signed up for the first workshop. Marcus was thrilled but also nervous. What if his teaching methods did not work for other people the way they had worked for Sarah? What if he could not help them? Sarah seemed to sense his worry. At one of their planning meetings, she said, "You're going to be great. You helped me when I thought it was impossible. You'll help them too." "But you were motivated," Marcus said. "You had a reason to learn. Your grandmother. These people might not have that same drive." "They have their own reasons," Sarah said. "Some of them probably miss making music just as much as I did. You're giving them a chance to reconnect with something they love. That's huge." Marcus knew she was right, but he still felt the pressure. This workshop was important. It could be the beginning of something big, or it could be a failure that went nowhere. The night before the first workshop, Marcus could not sleep. He lay awake going over his lesson plans in his mind. He worried about every possible thing that could go wrong. Finally, at 2 a.m, he gave up on sleep. He went to his piano and played softly so as not to wake his neighbors. The music calmed him as it always did. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Marcus woke early after only a few hours of sleep. His stomach was tight with nerves. Today was the first workshop. He dressed carefully and loaded his car with supplies. He had brought handouts, visual metronomes, recording equipment, and various small instruments that could help people feel vibrations and rhythms. Everything was organized in boxes and bags. Sarah met him at the community center at 9 in the morning, 2 hours before the workshop was scheduled to start. She looked as nervous as he felt. "Ready?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Marcus replied. They entered the community center together. The director, a friendly woman named Patricia, showed them to the room where the workshop would be held. It was a large open space with good lighting and wooden floors. At one end sat an upright piano. Folding chairs were arranged in rows facing the piano. "This is perfect," Marcus said. He and Sarah spent the next 2 hours setting up. They arranged the chairs in a semicircle instead of rows so everyone could see each other. They set out handouts on each chair. They tested the piano to make sure it was in tune. At 10:30, people started arriving. They came in ones and twos. Some were young, in their 20s and 30s. Others were middle-aged or elderly. A few came with family members or friends to interpret for them. About half the group knew sign language. The other half communicated through lip reading and writing. Marcus watched them file in with growing nervousness. These were real people with real hopes. What if he let them down? At 11 o'clock, everyone was seated. Marcus stood at the front of the room with Sarah beside him. He took a deep breath. Sarah touched his arm and smiled at him. "You've got this," she signed. Marcus had been learning sign language over the past few weeks so he could communicate better with students. Marcus signed back, "Thank you." Then he turned to address the group. He spoke clearly so those who could read lips would understand. Sarah stood beside him signing what he said for those who needed it. "Welcome everyone," Marcus began. "My name is Marcus Chen and this is Sarah Morrison. We're so glad you're here today. This workshop is about exploring music in new ways, ways that don't depend on hearing." He paused to let Sarah finish signing. "Many of you, like Sarah, have lost your hearing. Some of you may have never heard sound at all, but that doesn't mean music is lost to you. Music is more than just sound. It's vibration, it's rhythm, it's emotion, it's connection. And all of these things can be experienced without hearing." The group listened attentively. Marcus could see hope and skepticism mixed on their faces. They wanted to believe him, but they had been disappointed before. "Today we're going to learn some basic techniques for experiencing and creating music," Marcus continued. "We'll explore how to feel vibrations in instruments, how to use visual cues for rhythm and timing, how to express emotion through physical movement, and by the end of the day, everyone here will create a piece of music." A few people exchanged doubtful looks. One man raised his hand. "I used to play guitar," he signed through an interpreter, "but I haven't touched my instrument in 5 years. I'm afraid I've forgotten everything." "That's okay," Marcus signed back, his movements still a bit clumsy. "This isn't about remembering what you used to know. It's about learning a new way to connect with music. A way that works for you now, not how you were before." Sarah stepped forward. "I want to share my story with you," she signed. The room's attention turned to her. 2 years ago, I lost my hearing in a car accident. Before that, I was a pianist. Music was my whole life. When I lost my hearing, I thought I had lost music forever. I didn't touch a piano for 2 years. I thought it was impossible." She paused, emotion crossing her face. "Then I met Marcus. He showed me that I was wrong. He taught me to experience music in completely new ways. And now I play again. Not the same way I used to, but in some ways better. Because now I understand music more deeply. I feel it with my whole body, not just my ears." Sarah walked over to the piano and sat down. "I'm going to play something for you. I want you to watch carefully. Watch my hands, my face, my body. Feel the vibrations if you're close enough. Experience the music however you can." She began to play the lullaby she had performed for her grandmother. The room went completely still. Everyone watched Sarah with intense focus. Marcus watched them watching her. He saw their expressions change as they connected with what Sarah was doing. Even though they could not hear the notes, they could see the emotion in her playing. They could see the love and care she put into every movement. When Sarah finished, the room erupted in applause. Several people were crying. Others were smiling broadly. The energy in the room had completely changed. Sarah stood up from the piano. "If I can do it, you can too," she signed. "Let's begin." The workshop officially started. Marcus divided the group into smaller sections. He started with the basics, just as he had done with Sarah. First, he taught them about vibrations. He had everyone place their hands on the piano while he played different notes. They felt the differences between high notes and low notes, loud notes and soft notes. One woman, about 60 years old, started crying when she felt the vibrations. I remember this, she signed. I remember what music feels like. Next, Marcus introduced visual rhythm training. He used a light-up metronome that flashed at different tempos. He had the students clap along, matching their movements to the light. Then he added foot tapping, showing them how to feel rhythm through their whole body. A teenage boy who had been born deaf picked up the rhythms quickly. He had never heard music in his life, but he understood the patterns. He started creating his own rhythms, more complex than what Marcus had shown. His face lit up with joy. Sarah worked with individuals, helping them one-on-one. She showed them how to position their hands on the piano. She demonstrated how to tell if you were pressing too hard or too soft by the resistance of the keys. She shared all the little tricks Marcus had taught her. After 2 hours, Marcus called for a break. Snacks and drinks were provided. The students gathered in small groups, talking excitedly. Marcus could see sign language conversations happening all around the room. People were sharing their experiences, their hopes, their excitement. One young woman approached Marcus during the break. "Thank you," she signed. "I haven't felt this hopeful in years." "You're welcome," Marcus signed back. "But don't thank me yet. The real work is just beginning." After the break, Marcus moved to the next phase. Individual practice. Each student had a chance to sit at the piano and try playing something simple. Marcus and Sarah worked with them, offering guidance and encouragement. Some students picked it up quickly. Others struggled. But everyone tried. And that was what mattered most. The man who had played guitar before wanted to try the piano. His fingers were stiff from years of not playing. But slowly, with Marcus's help, he managed to play a simple scale. When he finished, he looked at his hands in wonder. "I thought I'd never make music again," he signed. "But I just did." The workshop was supposed to end at 3 in the afternoon. But at 3 o'clock, no one wanted to leave. Marcus looked at Sarah. She shrugged and smiled. "Let's keep going." They worked for another hour. By 4 o'clock, every single person in the room had created some kind of music. Some played simple melodies. Others just experimented with sounds and rhythms. But everyone participated. As the workshop finally came to a close, Patricia, the director, pulled Marcus and Sarah aside. "This was incredible," she said. "I've never seen our community members this engaged and happy. We need to make this a regular thing." "Really?" Sarah asked. "Absolutely. Would you be willing to do monthly workshops? We'd pay you, of course. This is exactly the kind of programming we want to offer." Marcus and Sarah looked at each other. They had talked about maybe doing this once or twice. But a regular ongoing program? That was bigger than they had imagined. "Yes," Sarah said firmly. "We'll do it." "Wonderful," Patricia said. "Let's meet next week to discuss details." After Patricia left, the students came over to say goodbye. Almost everyone asked when the next workshop would be. Several people asked if they could sign up for private lessons. A mother with a deaf daughter who was about 10 years old approached Sarah. "My daughter has always wanted to learn piano," the mother signed. "But every teacher we contacted said they couldn't work with a deaf student. Would you consider teaching her?" Sarah looked at the little girl who watched her with wide, hopeful eyes. Sarah's heart melted. "I would love to teach her." The mother hugged Sarah, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to us." By the time everyone had left, Marcus and Sarah were exhausted but elated. They collapsed into chairs, looking at each other with disbelief. "We did it," Sarah said. "We actually did it." "You did it," Marcus corrected. "Your story, your playing, that's what inspired them." "No," Sarah insisted. "We did it together. This wouldn't have happened without both of us." Marcus smiled at her. And in that moment, looking at her flushed, happy face, he almost told her how he felt. The words were right there. "I love you." But before he could speak, Sarah stood up. "We should celebrate. Want to grab dinner?" "Sure," Marcus said, the moment passing again. "Where do you want to go?" "I can't believe people want to pay for private lessons," Sarah said. "I never thought I'd teach again." "You're a natural teacher," Marcus said. "You connect with people. You understand what they're going through." Sarah twirled pasta on her fork thoughtfully. "You know what the best part of today was?" Seeing that little girl's face when her mom asked about lessons, she looked at me like I was giving her the greatest gift in the world. "You are," Marcus said. "You're giving her access to music." "That is a gift," Sarah smiled. "I guess I am." She paused. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why haven't you ever asked me about the accident? The one where I lost my hearing? Most people are curious. They want to know all the details. But you've never pushed me to talk about it. Marcus thought about his answer. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. And if you were never ready, that was okay too. What matters is who you are now, not what happened to you then. Sarah looked at him with soft eyes. You're different from most people, you know that? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? A very good thing, Sarah said quietly. They finished their dinner in comfortable conversation. Marcus drove Sarah back to her car at the community center. As she was getting out, she turned to him. Marcus, I want to tell you about the accident. I'm ready now. You don't have to, Marcus said. I know, but I want to. Sarah settled back into the passenger seat. It was 2 years ago in January. I was driving home from a piano performance. It was late at night and the roads were icy. A truck ran a red light and hit my car on the driver's side. Marcus listened quietly, not interrupting. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. Sarah continued. Everything hurt. I had a concussion, broken ribs, a fractured arm. But the worst part was the silence. Complete silence. The doctors explained that the impact had damaged my inner ears. The damage was permanent. I would never hear again. Sarah's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the pain in her eyes as she remembered. I fell apart. Completely apart. I was angry at the truck driver. Angry at the universe. Angry at myself for being on that road at that time. Music was everything to me, and suddenly it was gone. I didn't know who I was without it. How did you get through it? Marcus asked gently. Therapy. Lots of therapy, and time, and my grandmother. Even though she was getting older and having her own health problems, she was there for me every single day. She wrote me notes telling me I was strong, that I would find a new path, that losing my hearing didn't mean losing myself. Sarah smiled sadly. She was right, of course, but it took me a long time to believe it. And then, just when I was starting to accept my new life, she had the stroke. It felt like the universe was taking away the one person who understood me. I'm so sorry, Marcus said. But then I met you, Sarah said, looking directly at him. And you showed me that Grandma was right. I didn't have to lose music. I just had to find a new way to experience it. You gave me back a part of myself I thought was gone forever. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. I'm glad I could help. It was more than help, Marcus. You saw me, really saw me. Not as a broken person who needed fixing, but as someone with potential, someone who could still do amazing things. Sarah reached over and took his hand. You're one of the best people I've ever known. Marcus looked down at their joined hands. His heart was racing. This was the moment. He could tell her how he felt. She had just opened up to him. The timing would never be better. But fear held him back. What if she didn't feel the same way? What if telling her ruined their friendship and their working partnership? What if he lost her completely? You're pretty amazing yourself, Marcus said instead. Safe words. Friend words. Sarah squeezed his hand once more, then let go. I should get home. Long day tomorrow with Grandma. How is she doing? Marcus asked, relieved to change the subject. Really well, actually. The doctors are talking about releasing her to home care in a few weeks. I'll need to set up the house with ramps and special equipment, but she'll be home. That's what matters. That's wonderful news. Sarah smiled. It is. For the first time in months, everything feels like it's moving in the right direction. She opened the car door. Thank you for today, Marcus. For everything. Thank you for trusting me with your story. Sarah got out of the car and walked to her own vehicle. She waved before driving away. Marcus sat in his car for a long time, his head resting on the steering wheel. He was such a coward. She had been vulnerable with him, and he couldn't even tell her the truth about his feelings. But maybe that was for the best. Sarah was dealing with so much. Her grandmother's recovery, the new teaching opportunity, rebuilding her life. She didn't need the complication of his feelings. Marcus drove home feeling both happy and sad. Happy because the workshop had been a success. Sad because he was in love with someone who only saw him as a friend. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah and Marcus met with Patricia to plan future workshops. They decided to hold them once a month, with the option for students to sign up for private lessons in between. Sarah started teaching the little girl whose name was Emma. Twice a week, Emma and her mother came to Sarah's grandmother's house, which now had a piano in the living room. Sarah was a patient, encouraging teacher. Emma blossomed under her guidance. Marcus continued his hospital performances, but now Sarah sometimes came to watch even though she couldn't hear him play. She said she liked watching his hands move and seeing the expressions on people's faces as they listened. Margaret came home from the rehabilitation center. Sarah had converted the downstairs study into a bedroom for her, so she wouldn't have to manage stairs. With the help of home health aides, Margaret continued her therapy at home. One evening, Marcus came to visit Margaret at Sarah's invitation. The old woman's face lit up when she saw him. She made gestures at Sarah, clearly asking who this was. Sarah wrote on her notepad, "This is Marcus, the man who taught me to play again." Margaret looked at Marcus with tears in her eyes. She took his hand and squeezed it with her good hand. Then she pointed at Sarah and gave Marcus a thumbs up as if to say, "You did good with this one." Marcus laughed. "Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. Your granddaughter is pretty special." Margaret nodded emphatically. Then she made a gesture, pointing at Marcus, then at Sarah, then making a heart shape with her hands. Sarah blushed bright red. "Grandma, stop it." Margaret just smiled mischievously. Even without words, her meaning was clear. She thought Marcus and Sarah should be together. Marcus's heart ached. Even Margaret could see it. Everyone could see it except apparently Sarah. Or maybe Sarah did see it and was choosing to ignore it. Maybe she didn't feel the same way and was being kind by not acknowledging his feelings. That thought was almost too painful to bear. After visiting with Margaret for an hour, Marcus prepared to leave. Sarah walked him to the door. "Sorry about Grandma," she said. "She's convinced that every man I talk to is a potential boyfriend. She wants me to get married and have babies." "It's fine," Marcus said, trying to sound casual. "She just wants you to be happy." "I am happy," Sarah said. "I have my teaching, my music, and good friends like you. What more could I need? Friends." There was that word again. "I'm glad you're happy," Marcus said, and he meant it. Even if he couldn't have what he wanted Sarah to be happy. That was what love was, wasn't it? Wanting the other person's happiness even above your own. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked. "You seem sad lately." "I'm fine," Marcus lied. "Just tired. Lots of work between teaching at school, the hospital performances, and our workshops." "Maybe you should take a break," Sarah suggested. "You do so much for other people. You need to take care of yourself too." "Maybe," Marcus said, but he knew he wouldn't. Staying busy kept him from thinking too much about the things he couldn't have. That night, Marcus sat at his piano and composed a new piece. It was the saddest, most beautiful thing he had ever written, a melody full of longing and loss and love that could never be spoken. He titled it Silent Melody in his mind. For Sarah. Always for Sarah. The second workshop came and went, even more successful than the first. The third brought new students. By the fourth workshop, they had over 20 regular participants and a waiting list for private lessons. Sarah was busier than ever, teaching Emma and 3 other private students, but she seemed to glow with happiness. She had found her purpose again. Marcus was happy for her, and heartbroken for himself, because every time he saw her smile, every time she hugged him in excitement over a student's progress, every time she looked at him with trust and affection in her eyes, he fell a little more in love with her. And every time he stayed silent, because some melodies he was learning were meant to stay unheard. Some feelings were meant to stay unspoken. Some loves were meant to exist only in the quiet spaces of the heart. Marcus had taught Sarah to experience music in silence, but he had never expected to experience love the same way. Feeling it deeply, completely, but never giving it voice. It was beautiful and terrible all at once, and it was slowly breaking his heart. One evening in early March, Marcus received a text message from Sarah. "Can you come over? Need to talk. It's important." Marcus's stomach dropped. Those words never meant anything good. Marcus sat down on the couch, his hands gripping his knees nervously. Sarah sat across from him in an armchair. She looked serious but not upset. "That was something, at least. What's wrong?" Marcus asked. Sarah took a deep breath. "Nothing's wrong exactly. But something happened today and I need to talk to you about it." "Okay," Marcus said slowly. "I got a job offer," Sarah said. "A really good one. The community center wants to hire me full-time to run a new program for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. Music therapy, arts programming, support groups. I'd be in charge of developing and running the whole thing." Marcus felt relief wash over him. This was good news. "Sarah, that's wonderful. Congratulations." There's more, Sarah said. They want you too. They want to hire both of us to run the program together, full-time positions with benefits and everything. Marcus stared at her. What about my teaching job at the school? You'd have to quit, Sarah said. I know that's a big decision. That's why I wanted to talk to you before I gave them an answer. This only works if we both do it. We're a team, a team. Marcus let that word sink in. He would be working with Sarah every single day, spending hours and hours with her, building something meaningful together. It sounded like heaven and torture all at once. What do you want to do? Marcus asked. I want to say yes, Sarah admitted. This is everything I could hope for. A job doing what I love, helping people, making a real difference. But I won't do it without you. So I need to know what you're thinking. Marcus thought about his current job. He liked teaching music to children, but it wasn't his passion. The pay wasn't great, and the most fulfilling moments of his week were always the times he spent with Sarah, working on their workshops. I'd have to give them 2 weeks' notice at the school, Marcus said. But yes, I want to do this. Sarah's face broke into a huge smile. Really, you're sure? I'm sure, Marcus said. And he was. Even if working with Sarah every day would be emotionally difficult for him, he couldn't pass up this opportunity. This was important work that mattered. Sarah jumped up from her chair and pulled Marcus into a tight hug. Thank you. This is going to be amazing. We're going to help so many people. Marcus hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of her body against his. He allowed himself this moment of closeness, knowing it was all he would ever have. When Sarah pulled away, she was practically bouncing with excitement. We start in 2 weeks. Patricia wants us to come in Monday to start planning. We'll have our own office space, a music room with several instruments, and a budget for supplies. Can you believe it? It's incredible, Marcus agreed. They spent the next hour talking about plans and possibilities. Sarah had so many ideas. She wanted to expand beyond just music to include other arts programs, dance therapy for people with hearing loss, visual arts, theater, ways for deaf and hard of hearing people to express themselves creatively. Marcus listened and contributed his own ideas. They worked well together, as always. Their thoughts flowed naturally, building on each other's concepts. Finally, around 9 o'clock, Marcus stood to leave. I should go. I need to get up early tomorrow to prepare my lesson plans for school. And write your resignation letter, Sarah added with a grin. That too. Sarah walked him to the door. Marcus, I know this is a big change. Are you really okay with it? I am, Marcus assured her. This is the right thing to do. Sarah hugged him again, quickly this time. I'm so glad we're doing this together. As Marcus drove home, his emotions were a confused tangle. He was excited about the new job, anxious about leaving his current position, and terrified about spending so much time with Sarah while hiding his true feelings. But he had made his choice. Now he had to live with it. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Marcus gave his notice at the school. His boss was disappointed but understanding. His students threw him a small goodbye party on his last day. Several kids cried, which made Marcus feel both guilty and touched. Meanwhile, he and Sarah met with Patricia several times to plan the new program. They decided to call it Sound and Silence, a name that reflected the idea that music existed in both realms. They set up their office, a cozy room with 2 desks, file cabinets, and walls they could decorate with posters and art. Sarah brought in plants. Marcus brought in a small stereo and some of his favorite albums, even though Sarah couldn't hear them. She said she liked knowing they were there. Their music room was larger, with 3 keyboards, a drum set, various percussion instruments, and even a small digital sound system for playing music that participants could feel through floor vibrations. On their first official day of work, Marcus and Sarah stood in the music room together, looking at everything they had built. We did this, Sarah said softly. We made this happen. You made this happen, Marcus corrected. You were brave enough to start playing again. Brave enough to share your story. I just helped. No, Sarah said firmly. We did this together. Equal partners. That word again, it should have made Marcus happy. Instead, it reminded him of what he wanted but couldn't have. The program launched with immediate success. Their monthly workshops expanded to twice a month. Private lesson requests flooded in faster than they could handle. Word spread through the deaf community about these 2 teachers who made music accessible in new ways. Marcus and Sarah worked together every day. They planned lessons together, taught workshops together, even ate lunch together most days. They developed an easy rhythm, anticipating each other's needs and thoughts. To outside observers, they probably looked like a couple. They finished each other's sentences. They communicated with gestures and looks as much as words. They laughed at inside jokes no one else understood, but they weren't a couple. They were just friends and coworkers. At least that's what Sarah seemed to think. Marcus's feelings only grew stronger as time passed. He learned new things about Sarah every day. Her favorite foods, the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating, how she always organized supplies by color, the fact that she hummed silently to herself while working even though she couldn't hear it. He fell more in love with her with each small discovery. But he said nothing. He kept his feelings locked away, hidden where they couldn't hurt anyone. 3 months into the new job, on a warm day in June, Sarah came into their shared office looking troubled. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked. "I need to tell you something," Sarah said, "and I'm afraid it might change things between us." Marcus's heart stopped. This was it. She had figured out how he felt. She was going to tell him gently that she only thought of him as a friend. Their working relationship would become awkward. Everything would be ruined. "Okay," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. Sarah sat down at her desk and turned her chair to face him. She took a deep breath. "Do you remember when we had dinner after that first workshop? When I told you about my accident?" Marcus nodded. "I asked you why you never pushed me to talk about it, why you let me share things at my own pace. I remember. You said what mattered was who I am now, not what happened to me then." Sarah's eyes were bright with unshed tears. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. Most people defined me by my hearing loss, but you saw me as a whole person. Marcus waited, not sure where this was going. "That moment changed everything for me," Sarah continued. "It was the first time I felt like someone really understood me. Not Sarah, the deaf girl. Not Sarah, the tragic accident victim. Just Sarah. You are just Sarah," Marcus said. "You're talented, kind, hardworking, creative. Your hearing loss is just one small part of who you are." "See, that's exactly what I mean," Sarah said. "You see all of me." She paused, gathering courage. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course. Do you have feelings for me?" "Romantic feelings?" Marcus felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. His face flushed hot. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Sarah watched him carefully. "It's okay if you do. I just need to know." Marcus could have lied. He could have protected himself with a simple no, but he was tired of hiding, tired of the silence that surrounded his love for her. "Yes," he said quietly, "I have feelings for you. I have for months. Maybe from the very beginning. I'm sorry if that makes things awkward." "I never meant to—" "Why didn't you tell me?" Sarah interrupted. "Because you were dealing with so much. Your grandmother, learning to play again, starting the workshops, the new job. I didn't want to add to your stress. And I was afraid. Afraid you didn't feel the same way. Afraid of ruining our friendship and our work together." "So you just stayed silent?" Sarah asked. "Keeping it all inside?" "Yes." Sarah stood up and walked over to where Marcus sat. She knelt down in front of his chair so they were at eye level. "Marcus Chen, you are the smartest, kindest, most patient man I've ever met. But sometimes you're also incredibly stupid." Marcus blinked in surprise. "What? I have feelings for you too, you idiot," Sarah said, starting to smile through her tears. "I have for months. I kept waiting for you to say something, to make a move, to give me any sign that you felt the same way. But you never did. So I started thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe you only saw me as a friend." Marcus stared at her in disbelief. "You have feelings for me?" "Yes. Why do you think I asked you to help me in the first place?" "We didn't waste it," Marcus said. "We were building something. Our friendship, our work, our trust in each other. All of that mattered. But we could have been doing all that while also kissing," Sarah pointed out. Marcus laughed. "That's a fair point." Sarah's expression became more serious. "I need you to understand something. Being with me means dealing with my deafness. There will be times when communication is frustrating. Times when I can't understand what you're saying. Times when the hearing world makes things complicated." "I know," Marcus said, "and I'm ready for all of that. Being with you means all of you. The challenges and the joys. I want it all." Even though I'll never hear you say I love you out loud? Marcus thought about that. Then he smiled. You don't need to hear it. You'll see it, feel it, know it. We'll find our own ways to communicate those words. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. How did I get so lucky to find you? I think I'm the lucky one, Marcus said. They kissed again, longer this time. When they finally pulled apart, Sarah glanced at the clock on the wall. We have a workshop starting in 20 minutes, she said. We should probably get up off the floor then, Marcus said. But neither of them moved. They just sat there, holding hands, looking at each other with wonder. Finally, Sarah stood and pulled Marcus to his feet. Come on, we have students waiting. They prepared for the workshop, but everything felt different now. Better, brighter. Every glance they shared held new meaning. Every accidental touch sent electricity through Marcus's body. The workshop itself was one of their best. Marcus taught with renewed energy. Sarah glowed with happiness. The students responded to their enthusiasm, working harder and laughing more than usual. After everyone left, Marcus and Sarah cleaned up the music room together. Want to get dinner? Marcus asked. Is this a date? Sarah teased. It's absolutely a date, Marcus confirmed. They went to the same Italian restaurant where they had eaten after their first workshop. But this time they sat on the same side of the booth instead of across from each other. They held hands on top of the table. They fed each other bites of pasta. They looked like what they were, two people in love. Over dinner, they talked about what came next. They decided to take things slow, even though they had already known each other for months. They would date properly, get to know each other in this new context. I want to meet Margaret again, Marcus said. As your boyfriend this time, not just your friend and teaching partner. She's going to be so smug, Sarah said with a laugh. She's been pushing me to date you since she first met you. Smart woman, your grandmother. The smartest, Sarah agreed. After dinner, Marcus drove Sarah home. He walked her to her door like a proper gentleman. Thank you for tonight, Sarah said. For everything. Thank you for being brave enough to ask me how I felt, Marcus said. I might never have worked up the courage to tell you. Sarah smiled. We would have figured it out eventually. We're too good together not to. Marcus kissed her goodnight. A soft, sweet kiss that promised more to come. As he drove home, Marcus couldn't stop smiling. For months he had lived with a silent melody in his heart. A love he couldn't express. Feelings he couldn't voice. But now that melody had found its voice, not in words or sounds but in actions and touches and shared glances. He thought about all the workshops they would teach together. All the students they would help. All the moments they would share. And for the first time in months, Marcus felt complete. The next few weeks were like a dream. Marcus and Sarah continued running their program, but now they did it as a couple. They were careful to keep things professional at work, but everyone could tell something had changed. They were happier, more in sync, more alive. Patricia noticed and pulled them aside one day. I don't know what happened with you two, but whatever it is, keep it up. The students are responding better than ever. Margaret had exactly the reaction Sarah predicted when they told her they were dating. She clapped her good hand against her leg and pointed at them with an "I told you so" expression. Then she pulled both of them into a hug and cried happy tears. The workshops continued to grow. They added a third monthly session to keep up with demand. Marcus and Sarah hired 2 assistant teachers, both deaf individuals who had gone through their program and wanted to give back. Emma, Sarah's first private student, performed at a recital for her school. She played a simple piece perfectly, and her proud parents cried in the audience. Afterward, Emma ran to Sarah and hugged her tight. I did it, Emma signed. I played music. You did, Sarah signed back. And you were beautiful. Marcus watched this exchange with a full heart. This was why they did what they did. These moments of triumph and joy and connection. 6 months after they started dating, Marcus planned something special for Sarah's birthday. He told her to meet him at the community center on Saturday evening, but wouldn't tell her why. When Sarah arrived, Marcus led her to the music room. Inside, he had set up candles all around the piano. Rose petals were scattered on the floor. It was romantic and beautiful. What's all this? Sarah asked. I wrote something for you, Marcus said. A piece of music. And I want to play it for you. Sarah smiled. But I can't hear it. I know. But I think you'll understand it anyway. Marcus sat down at the piano. Sarah stood beside him, placing her hands on the piano's wooden frame so she could feel the vibrations. Marcus began to play. The piece was everything he had ever felt for Sarah. It started soft and tentative like the beginning of their friendship. It grew stronger and more confident as it progressed, like his developing feelings. There was a section in the middle that was complicated and a little chaotic, representing the months of hiding his love. And then the music resolved into something beautiful and clear and simple, pure love openly expressed. When Marcus finished, he looked up at Sarah. She was crying. "It was beautiful, wasn't it?" she said. "I could feel it. In the vibrations, in your movements, in your face. You were telling me a story." "Our story," Marcus confirmed. He stood and pulled a small box from his pocket. Sarah's eyes went wide. "Sarah Morrison," Marcus said, kneeling down. "I love you. I love your strength, your courage, your kindness, your passion for helping others. I love the way you experience the world. I love everything about you." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring. "I know we've only been officially dating for 6 months, but I've known you for over a year. I've loved you for most of that time, and I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else." Marcus took a breath. "Will you marry me?" Sarah was crying too hard to speak. She nodded vigorously, tears streaming down her face. Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms. They held each other, both crying, both laughing, both overwhelmed with happiness. When they finally pulled apart, Sarah said, "I love you too, so much. Yes, I'll marry you." They kissed, surrounded by candlelight and rose petals in the music room where they had taught so many students to find beauty in silence. And Marcus realized that this was the greatest melody of all. Not one that could be played on a piano or heard with ears, but one that was felt with the heart. The melody of two people finding each other, understanding each other, loving each other despite and because of all their differences. A year later, Marcus and Sarah got married in a small ceremony at the community center. Margaret was there in her wheelchair, but healthier than she had been in years. The students from their program attended and played music during the ceremony. Emma performed a special piece she had composed herself. When it came time for the traditional first dance, Marcus had arranged something special. Instead of music, a visual artist created a light show timed to specific rhythms. Marcus and Sarah danced to lights and patterns they could both see, moving together in perfect harmony. Their friends and family watched with tears in their eyes. It was unconventional and beautiful and perfectly them. As Marcus held Sarah in his arms, moving to a rhythm only they could feel, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a crying woman in a hospital lobby, a silent moment of connection between two strangers. And it had grown into this, a love that didn't need words or sounds, a love that existed in gestures and touches and shared understanding. Sarah looked up at him and smiled. Marcus smiled back. No words were needed. They understood each other perfectly. In the years that followed, Sound and Silence became one of the most respected programs of its kind in the country. Marcus and Sarah trained other teachers in their methods. They wrote a book about their approach to music therapy for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. They traveled to conferences and workshops, spreading their message. But more importantly, they helped hundreds of people reconnect with music and with themselves. People who thought they had lost something precious forever learned that it had only been hiding, waiting to be rediscovered in a new form. Emma grew up and became a music teacher herself, specializing in working with deaf students. Several of their other students went on to perform professionally. One even composed a symphony designed to be experienced through vibration and visual elements. Margaret lived to see her great-grandchildren born, Sarah and Marcus's twin daughters. Though she couldn't speak to them with words,